Before we get started in this tutorial, I really need to stress this out. First of all, weight painting is very difficult. Second of all, you're probably going to have to do some external research when it comes to weight painting, especially depending on your model specific case. I sadly could not be able to explain every weight paint error in existence because it will make the tutorial way too long. So that's something I need to address. Also, during the recording, some stuff have happened with the model. For example, near the end of the tutorial, apparently my Miku model's eye bones apparently swapped names out of nowhere and messed the weight paint up, and basically some issues happened during the recording. I just kind of left it there so that way you can at least see how I would usually sort of troubleshoot, like how do I do my problem solving when it comes to rigging. But do keep in mind you're definitely gonna have to do a lot of experimenting, a lot of problem solving, because weight painting is complicated. It ain't easy. Issues are going to happen. Weight painting ain't perfect, unless of course you develop your own workflow regarding it. Although you're still gonna get issues no matter what. But either way, if by any chance you have any more issues, like by any chance you follow the tutorial and you're still struggling, you can message me on the social media below. I will put my socials here. I highly recommend using my other socials so that way you can actually send the picture of the error to me so I can better diagnose your issue. Otherwise, if you just say it in comments, I'll probably mistaken your issue for something else. But if by any chance you can only contact me via YouTube comments, feel free to just message me there. I will make sure to respond to every message as soon as I can. But that's really all I have to say though. Enjoy the tutorial and good luck. Hi everybody, I hope you're all having a good day. I hope you're all smiling and enjoying your lovely day. So in this following tutorial, I'm going to be showing you on how I rig and weight paint my base model. So what you're seeing here is a model that I made from scratch. It's supposed to be a Miku model, but I haven't finished rigging it and such, but I want to use this model so that way I could demonstrate to you guys how do I rig base models, like models that don't even have a rig at all. How do I do it? And before I do get started, I will say, as a disclaimer, if by any chance you are very new to Blender, like you've never touched Blender before, I highly recommend please check out my Dumbify Blender series, or you can check out other tutorials, like you can Google or look up on YouTube other tutorials about getting started with Blender, if by any chance you are confused on what the heck I'm doing and such, so you get a better idea on navigating Blender. But I will do my very best to at least say the keys I'm pressing, what the heck am I doing, so if a beginner were to actually end up following this tutorial, they should at least somewhat get a sort of good idea on what they're doing. But with that being said, on that disclaimer, I will also point out that at the bottom left there's this little key thing here, so if by any chance I go a little too fast for you and you're confused on what I'm inputting, you could check out the bottom left and it should help you understand what I'm inputting so you get a better idea in case you get lost. Now let's go ahead and get started. Now first and foremost, of course, you need a model to rig. So basically, once again, this part I'm not going to really cover because it's really up to your situation, your scenario on what model do you want to rig and such. Whether you're taking a void model, you deleted its rig and you want to try using that for practice, you could do that. Whether you actually made a model from scratch and you want to rig that up, or you took a boost model, remove this rig and you want to rig that, like whatever scenario, all I could say is you need a model in the scene. And I will be doing preferably a humanoid model, but you can still, if you wish, you can apply this knowledge to, like, I guess, animal models or objects models, I guess. But once again, if you're gonna do something a bit different from a humanoid model, please make sure you apply your knowledge. If by any chance you have a hard time with applying your knowledge, let me know and I'd be happy to help you out with that. Now, with that being said, the first thing we have to do is create a skeleton. So in order to create a skeleton, what we need to do is, well, there's actually two ways of doing it. So the first method, which I'll press Shift A, and basically you'll have this little window or little tab thing area here. You're gonna go down to Armature, and basically this is what I meant by two methods on creating an armature. You can either one, use a pre-existing armature, or two, make it your own. And honestly, I'm gonna say this right now, armatures aren't really copyrighted or anything like that. They're just rigs that you can utilize, and you can name it however you want. So, just keep that in mind. You could use pre-existing rigs, although, um, I will say in advance, if by chance let's say you're copying like a very crazy rig, like that has drivers and controllers and stuff, you might have a bit of a hard time. Like if you're a beginner and you just took a crazy rig and you want that for your model, you might have a bad time with it. So start off simple. A simple humanoid game rig is, the best recommended for just getting started with rigging. So for Blender, there is the human meta rig here, which is a great, it's a great model here. Now, of course, it does look a bit overwhelming with the face rig. Honestly, you can actually just get rid of that. Just go to edit mode, go Z, wireframe, and then just, click and drag and select the bones that you don't want. You can also use the C key and then zoom in and out with your scroll wheel. And you can use that to select bones a bit easier. And you can just press the X button to delete the bones, and boom. You just clean up the armature however you want, and you can utilize that. And definitely you can also move the, let me just change this to medium point. You can also definitely change the pose of the bones, that way it fits to your model. Now, there's also another one. So let's say you are someone who's working on Vtuber models, or you are working on VRM models and such, and you want a more easier way of rigging your models, from scratch models, and you just want an easier rig for your models. There is a VRM humanoid, so you'll have to download the VRM Blender add-on for this. Keep that in mind. But basically, you'll have to click on the, when you have the add-on, which I'll make sure to link all my resources in the description, including the playlist for the Demofied Blender series if you need it. But basically, an armature will pop up. You can mess around with these values. Also, usually I just, for this case, if I were to use it, I would just scale it with the S key, scale it to around little Miku's height. Press on Object tab up here, go to Apply, and then go to All Transforms. Go to edit mode. Make sure that mirror mode is on the top right. You see this little X here where my mouse is, and you see the little gizmo right here, or gimbo, whatever you call it. But basically you see this guy, and then you hit the X right here, and you just click on the bone that you want, and you could just move it around and scale it to your model. And this is a bit more of an easier way, so if you wish to not, make a rig from scratch, you can definitely utilize this. This will save a lot of time. If by any chance, you're having a hard time with seeing the bones and laying it up, you can either go press Z and wireframe, and then just adjust your bones in the view, like so. So you can either do that, or if you want to see your avatar, in solid view or color view, you'll have to go into the object data properties, go to view display, and then go to in front, and that way you'll be able to see your actual, your armature even in solid view, so that way you can do your adjustments. But for this case though, I will be doing mine from scratch. So that way you can see, like, if I were to make, my own armature from scratch, how would I do it? So, of course, this will be the more longer way. So if you are someone who's a bit impatient, like, you don't have time to make an armature, I definitely would recommend utilizing any pre-made rigs that, keep it simple at first, and if, as you learn more about rigging and armatures and stuff, or all that, eventually you can get more advanced, such as utilizing the Rigify add-on, but I won't go over that as it's a bit more advanced, but there are tutorials that do cover the Rigify add-on if you want to go a bit more intense. There's also Auto Rig Pro or something you could check out, but either way, I'm gonna go ahead and do Shift A, Armature, and we're gonna do single bone, and we're gonna make our own armature from scratch. So, so basically what we have to do is we have to, Shift A, add the bone, and then we're going to go into edit mode by the tab key. And then basically, just a reminder, if by any chance you don't have this little arrows thing popping up, just click on this button on the left side that says move. Just click that, you'll have your movements, because I think it's disabled by default, which kind of sucks, but it's there, so just click that. Also, if you want more control, you can also just click on this button that says transform, and you can have a bit more control just by clicking without the need of having the shortcut R. But I like using shortcuts because it's more efficient for me. But yeah, so anyway, so for the hip bone, basically what this kind of depends on what the person wants. Now, sometimes, let's say for VR chatter, they would usually have the hip like this. But what I see with MMD models, for example, they have it like this. So this kind of really just depends on, how you want the bone to be positioned. Like, if you absolutely need it to be upward, you can. If it has to be downward, for orientation, I guess. But there's a reason why I have mine like this. It's because of the way I make my IK bones. This is personal to how I do my rigging. You don't have to follow what I do exactly on positioning, but I have it like this because of how I do my IK bones, and this just allows the legs to not freak out a lot. So, but once again, you could do it like this and you'll be perfectly fine. But I'll have mine like this for now, so yeah. But anyways, now for spine bones, and remember that E is to extrude, so if you're gonna make a new bone, it's E to extrude and then left click to accept it. For spine bones, this really depends on how many you need. So if you're making, let's say, a model for Maya Human IK and you want to have a very, a crazy, like, long spine, maybe you might want to go for a more intense number, like around 10 or around 10 or less ish. This once again depends on the model, like, is it necessary to have multiple spine bones? Because usually what I recommend as a sweet spot, which many people tend to use, especially for VR chat or just, simple VR models and such, they usually only use just 2. Even MMDers also utilize just 2 because it's simple to animate and just saves more time. But if you want more flexibility on your model, let's say for mocap suits, Rococo utilizes 3 spine bones. You can definitely use 3 spine bones. If you want to go even more intense, you could definitely utilize 4 spine bones, which for my own models, I tend to use 4 spine bones. But for this tutorial, I will just only use 3 spine bones for this case. I won't go a bit extreme or anything like that, but we'll just use 3 spine bones, just to be safe. But you can do 2 or however you want. You can do a crazy amount, just your preference. But after you make the spine bones, you'll see extrusion with E key, and you just place it and you make it however you want. Basically, it should look something like this. It can be curved. If you wish to have it curved, you can do that, or you can have it super straight, your preference. Next thing is to make the neck and the head bone, which is very simple. Just extrude and go up, and boom. See, now you just made your first ever spine. Or I guess if it's not your first time, then you made a spine bone. Now the next thing what we have to do is we have to go into front view for this. We have to quickly make some arms and leg bones. So we'll start off with the leg bones. So what we have to do is we have to take our hip bone, Shift D to make a duplicate of it. And we're going to focus on one side. There is a way of mirroring it to the other side with the symmetry tool, which I will show you that once we get our bones ready on this side here. But basically, you're going to Shift D, the hip bone, and then you're just going to go ahead and basically make this a bit straighter, so that way make it straighter. Basically, this is supposed to be your thigh bone, so that way you can move your upper thigh. And then you are going to make the bone for the lower calf. then you have to make a bone for the foot. Now, here's something about the foot as well. Now, in case you're wondering why do some people have the ankle up here rather than straight down, it's actually because think of these little balls that you see. These little balls are basically joints. So when you are moving your feet around, think of how with a real human body, take a look at your joints. Where are they located, basically? So it's very important to make sure that these little ball joints are placed correctly, so that way you can, rotate right. So even though, let's say for this case, this looks pretty high, it will ensure that little Miku here will have a proper ankle rotation. So once you have your foot like this, or however you want, depending on the model, whether you're wearing high heels or flat feet, whatever, depending on the model, once you have your flat feet, then you have to make at least one bone for the toes. Now, if by any chance you want to rig your toes for, I guess, some specific reasons I won't go into, or you want to use it for a fun animation, you are free to also put bones on each individual toe and rig it, but I will not go over that. I just want to keep this nice and simple, especially for if there's a beginner who wants to learn about, creating armatures and rigging them all for the first time. So we'll keep it simple, but that's your preference if you want to rig the individual toes. But either way, you should have your leg bone, or your entire leg bone here, and we're gonna go ahead and make the arm bone. Now for the arm bones, we're gonna start off with the shoulder, so go ahead and shift D from the upper spine bone, whether it's your second or fourth or whatever, and you're gonna go ahead and rotate the bone that you duplicate from the spine here, and you're going to use that as a shoulder. Now this really depends on how you want the shoulder to be. Some people might have the shoulder really into the body like this. Some people may have it super short. It's really up to your preference. Usually for my models, I would have it somewhere around like closest-ish to the collarbone area, and then it will be in front because as we move our shoulders, the front part of our collarbone is also affected. So I kind of have mine like this, but sometimes I'll also have mine here. It just really depends on the model I'm rigging, and I guess the type of quality they want to rig. I don't know, it just really depends, but I'll have mine like this. So for my shoulder, I will then extrude this with the E key and make my upper arm. Now I will say this also, if by any chance as well, I do want to mention this, if you want to make twist bone for your model, there is a way of doing that. So I'll quickly show you, but I won't show you how to rig, like how the twist bones like actually rig, but I'll quickly show you. I'll still quickly show you how they're made, basically, but just not full in-depth twist bones and how to make them. But basically, just a quick overview. You need to duplicate the upper arm, and then you take your you duplicate, then you take this arm here, go to your armature tab here, and then just subdivide, and then just put this armature over it, and that's pretty much how you would actually make twist bones. Do keep in mind it's not advised to put weight paint data on this bone, but have these twist bones with the weight paint data, basically. So this bone here should stay unweight painted, but basically a controller bone that moves both the arms. And basically when it rotates, it should, affect twist bones. I won't go, once again, I'm not going to go over in depth on twist bones. I might make that into a separate tutorial on its own, because that's, I kind of have to explain also, like, how do you set up the constraints and stuff and all that, which I'll leave that for later. But I will at least put in the description a tutorial that does cover twist bones, in case you really do want to learn that, right now. So check out that video at the description, but I'm not going to go over in depth with that, as I don't want to overcomplicate this tutorial as much as I think I might be doing right now. But But let's go ahead and continue. I just want to make sure you guys are good. But let's go ahead and extrude this. So E, X, and we're going to make the lower arm. And then we're going to make one more bone, which I press the 7 key for the top view. And we're going to go ahead and extrude again for the wrist. Now for the hands, it also depends on, you know, how many fingers you have and basically your placement on where you want the joints to be. But I'll go ahead and extrude out quickly because you pretty much should have most of the knowledge already on, you know, duplicating a bone and then extruding it, so I don't have to go really step by step on this though. But you can at least just see that for what I'm doing, I am just, you know, setting up the fingers. I will definitely say that the topology of the fingers that I made are a little bit confusing because I added the lines here, which I shouldn't have done. But I will make sure that on the final version of this model, those actually go away. So that way, not only that, but also correct the knuckles and stuff, because after I did some studying with some models, you shouldn't actually have this sort of line right here. This is just, no. Because fun fact about your hands, you do have technically 3 bends, but there should be 2, so there should be 1 bend here, 1 bend here, and then the other bend, the 3rd bend, is basically your knuckles, not this area, so this is incorrect. So I just want to make sure to address that. So in case you're wondering how finger bends would work, it's kind of like that. And remember also, your fingers do have a lot of curves as well, so if you're, let's say, trying to get a more realistic bend with your fingers, make sure you basically study fingers, you know, in depth regarding the curves and the shape and stuff. But anyways, overall, let's go ahead, set that. And excuse my rambling though, but yeah, so should be around like this area. Once again, I really have to fix this finger topology, but make sure to also check your front view and side view of your hands in case, you know, let's say for the thumb, if your thumb is super low, you gotta make sure to adjust accordingly. So do keep that in mind. Alright, now but overall, after you should have done your duplication and, you know, extrusion and stuff, well, mainly for the fingers, you just have to duplicate just 1 finger bone and just scale it, and that's kind of it. Very simple. Basically what we're going to do now, because now that we have our finger bones, arm bones, and our leg bones, one last thing is we have to create our eye bone. So you could technically just either one, duplicate the head bone and then just rotate and place your eye bone here and make that your eye bone, like that. You can also just shift A and then just add a bone here and just use that. Really up to you, but I'm just gonna do the shift, you know, I'm gonna do the duplication from the head to make the eye bone. And I place this in the middle of the eye. So wherever the middle of the eye is, I place it there. I will say something about eye bones. This really depends on the structure you have. So for my case, I have the sort of empty socket and then the individual iris sort of method for this little Miku. But I will say that if you, let's say you have an eyeball, for example, you might have to mess around with the position of the eye, so you'll have to experiment this. So some models might need a small bone just to have more control of the eye so it doesn't clip through the face. Some might have it super far, some might have it back in. Like, it really just depends. I would just recommend playing around with the placement of the eye bone when you rig it, so that way it will, you know, be good. So it just depends on your eye structure, but that's definitely something you might want to keep in mind about. But anyways, but now that we have that eye bone, we have to begin with naming our bones, because we have to also make sure that we name our bones, because if we want to make sure this, you know, if this basically mirrors to the other side, we have to give them names. And I'll show you just a manual way. I believe there's more automatic ways of naming bones, but I'm gonna just do the manual way. So I'm gonna name this I, and I'm gonna use _R. So for Blender, regarding mirroring, so basically you can either use _R, _L, you can even use .L and R, like that. What you can also even do is _right and _left. And I believe you can even do .left and right. So you can use underscore or dots, I guess. But for my case, I like to keep mine simple with _L. But sometimes I might use just dots depending on the model. But it just depends really on the naming. Just name it as long as you know what the bone is for, and as long as whatever usage you're using it for, the program knows what the bone is, that you make sure to actually name it properly. Don't just leave it as bone.003. Even though, yes, it's tedious to name the bones manually, it's very important to have proper bone names, so not only you are able to detect the bones, but also the program also detects the bones in case, for certain add-ons, whether it's mocap suit usage or Vtuber, whatever, basically, whatever usage, just name it properly. And once again, if you don't want to name these manually yourself, you can also just, use a pre-existing rig once again, so that way you don't have to deal with a whole crazy naming. But basically what you're seeing me do right now is I am going ahead and naming it accordingly. So this will be hips. You can also name it pelvis. This is spine 1. You can name this, you can also just name this spine. And this is spine 2, which you could just name as chest. And then this one, spine 3, you can name this upper chest. Basically like the Unity humanoid bone names that Unity has, you can name it that. But as long as you name it either spine or chest or whatever the heck, as long as it's a good name. As for leg, this will be called upper leg right. This will be lower leg right. This will be foot right. And then you'll have toe right. And let's go ahead and I will move this a little back for the rigging, just a little bit. We'll name this shoulder right with just the R. Upper arm right. And then lower arm right. And then wrist right. Now, I will also show this now, but basically, you can select your leg here after you've done your proper naming. Just go to Armature, go to Symmetrize, and boom, you got your Armature Symmetrize. And you can do the same thing with the arms right here. You select your entire arm, Symmetrize, and boom, it saves you a lot of time. So instead of manually adding the bones yourself, you could just, add it to one side and then here to the other side. And you can even do the same with the eye here. Symmetrize, boom, you got a little eye. And now we have to manually, name the fingers, which is a nightmare, but that's what we're gonna have to do. But basically, we'll name this pinky 1R. So this is my naming scheme for when I name fingers, such as the pinky, for example. And what I basically do is I Control-C to copy the name, and then I Control-V and I just change the number. So if by chance you don't want to manually name it, you don't want to freaking manually rename, name it and type it all out, just Control-C, Control-V, utilize it, it will help you a lot. Ring finger, so we'll name that R. We'll set this to 2. And then we'll set this to 3. Alright, and then this will be middle finger. There's also other ways, once again, on naming the fingers. There's the more, I guess, scientifically accurate names, and then there's the more simplistic names of it. It's really just up to your preference. For my model, I did reference off the Rococo Newton model naming. Of course, I did had to change some stuff though, but I did utilize the Newton naming so that way when I do retarget animations, it will be a lot more easier on me. So that way I don't have to, do it all the time. But then again, Rococo has, a setting to save the names. But that's just something a little off topic. I'm not going to really go over that. I just wanted to address it in case, Rococo people who are using the video as reference to rigging. I also mentioned that. So, yeah. So now that we have them here, basic, simple naming. After that, boom. And then you just select your finger bones, and then you go and symmetrize it. And it should be on the other side. And voila! You have just made your first armature. And it looks really well. Congratulations! And we'll make sure to also go to the data here, or object data properties here, and go in front so that way I can see what the heck I'm doing. But with that, now that we have a simple armature, you can once again also rig stuff. So this is more of an extra, but you can do stuff like the tongue, so you can duplicate from the head and I guess create stuff like tongue if you wish, which can look something like this. You can do that, which Miku here does not have a mouth, like an inner mouth quite yet. I have to model that. You can even rig booba bones, so you could do that. So we can go ahead and extrude like 1 bone or 2 bones, however you want, depending on the chest size of the model. You can also do that. Although once again, for this tutorial, I'll keep it simple, so I won't do booba bones or even butt bones, but just wanted to make sure to address it that yes, you can rig butt or booba bones. So it should look something like this basically. But yeah. Now with that being said though, once again, when it comes to making your skeleton, do it however you want. But once again, you'll have to apply your knowledge from this tutorial to your situation, as I can't really go over every single model type, your exact rigging standards, because some people may have more of a strict rigging standard or may want more out of their rig than some other people. Some may want more simplified one, but yeah. But with that being said though, the next step after making your armature is weight paint. And weight painting is basically where we have to make the skeleton move with the mesh. But of course, one last thing before I go over the weight paint, we have to make sure that we have correct parenting for our bones. Parenting is basically where if we go to pose mode, which is top left pose mode here, if you were to move this head, you would see that the eyes don't follow the head bone here. So this is why parenting is very important, to make sure that the eyes don't basically fall off, or they don't stay hanging behind. So we have to make sure that we correct our parenting. So let's go ahead and show you how to do the parenting of the bones here. So in order to parent, let's say, the eye bones to the head bone, in order for the eyes to follow the head bone here, you need to go to edit mode, make sure to select your eye bone, shift select for your other eye, and then shift select the head bone, and then do Control P, and then keep offset. Now there's a difference between keep offset and connected. Connected means that the bones will be, connected to the joint of the bone, and offset means that it's going to be parented to the parent bone here, but it's not going to be like basically like connected by joint. It's just going to be, it's like, I guess, when you're wirelessly connecting your phone versus connecting your phone with a wire, that sort of thing, if that gives you the best analogy. But for eyes, I would recommend just do offset. For stuff like arms, like this, I would recommend to do connected, which for our case, it should be connected already. And mainly all we have to do is make sure that we have parented at least the shoulder bones to the upper spine bone, like this, with offset. the leg bones to the hip bone, and then make sure, once again, I gotta keep remembering to enable the mirror mode. Make sure that our fingers are parented to the wrist here, and double check for the other side. But if, as long as you have your bones properly named and you have mirror mode on, what you parent on one side happens on the other side, so we should be pretty good. And overall, your model should be able, at least if you know it's correct, you should have the entire model rotate on the hip bone, which we also gotta do the spine bone keep offset. So spine bone to hip, that should be parented, and it should basically do this to know that you're pretty much on the right track, but definitely double check to make sure that your bones move like bones. So you can look at yourself IRL for reference on movement, or you could look up videos on movements and stuff, but basically as long as your rig looks pretty much, you know, normal on movement, you should be pretty good regarding you should be pretty good overall to begin the weight paint. Now, in order to do weight paint, first and foremost, the first thing you have to do is make sure to identify how much stuff are you going to be weight painting on the armature. So for my case, I'm not only going to just, you know, weight paint the base body here, but I also will have to weight paint the eyes here, for instance, and the eyebrow. Which for the eyes and eyebrows should be pretty simple. The body will be the more complex one, and this really just depends on how many pieces are on your model. There's also tinier pieces I have, such as the nose and then my face lines for little Miku here. So that's something to keep in mind about, but this is why it's good to identify exactly, you know, like what pieces are you going to be rigging. So for the eyebrow, we're not going to have like stuff like eyebrow bones or anything. We're going to keep it nice and simple, but for now, let's go ahead and hide all the extra stuff, basically. So the stuff that aren't connected to the body, we're going to go ahead and hide those, so that way only the body is basically shown, so we can only just focus on that, basically. So double check that it's just a body, or check your hierarchy to also double check. But pretty much only just this body is shown. So we're going to go ahead and begin weight painting the body. So to start off, we're going to use auto weight paint in order to do this. So we're going to do, what we're going to do is we're going to take our mesh. So select your mesh first, shift select to the armature here, Control P, and then automatic weights. And one thing I will have to also mention as well, let's say your model has modifiers. This is also something that's also very important. Now, technically, I will say this, if you were to, let's say, you know, do the automatic weight paints, you go into your, you know, model here, and you were to start moving the rigging here, basically, even though you have the modifiers on, it should look pretty good, as you can see, with the rigging and stuff. So technically you can still rig them all with modifiers, although do keep in mind, depending on what you are exactly rigging, it may cause some issues, so it's really just up to you. But technically you can still keep this on, or you can just apply it if you really absolutely need to. But for our case though, since the way I made the mesh works well with this, we should be pretty much alright. And basically just test out your, you know, your spine, the neck, and the head bone, and for the most part, you know, it looks pretty decent as long as you place your bones right and such, and you go to individual origins on the top here, select your finger bones, double press on the R button and test it out. It should be pretty alright. Now, of course, there are some issues I will say. So when you see the knuckles moving, you can see that it looks kind of awkward because it's moving more of the palms here. Depending on the model, sometimes it might end up looking good, sometimes it may look weird. So this is stuff that you have to keep in mind, that auto rigging isn't going to, you know, always be a yes. I mean, it's still good to have a base weight paint though, but just remember that it's not perfect. So if you're looking for perfection, you'll definitely have to edit the weight paint so that way it'll be fixed. I'll also show you even, especially this example, which is always gonna happen. No, once again, it really just depends, but this is always gonna happen. Basically, when you do the splits, it's gonna do this, and yeah, I don't think, you know, if we're doing the splits with our mocap suit or something, or animation, I don't think we can do that. That's not normal. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to edit weight paint. So in order to do that, what we need to do first and foremost is select your armature and basically start one at a time. Because while there are a handful of issues I could point out on the model, just start off one at a time. So we're gonna start off with fixing issue number 1, disgusting splits. And just take your die bones and make it where it does the splits basically. And get out of pose mode, and we're going to go into edit mode by selecting our mesh, going to object mode in the top left, and then we're going to go into weight paint. And basically here, this is where our model will turn blue, and we can begin weight painting. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the object data properties of the mesh, and you're going to look into Vertex Groups. Now, in order to define Vertex Groups is basically just, you know, that in its name. Groups that vertexes are assigned to. Now, remember, vertex groups are not exclusive to weight paint. They can actually be used for other stuff, such as, you know, when you're using the modifier, like, let's say my outline modifier here, for example, there's a vertex group called outline, so that way it controls the thickness of the outlines on the mesh, using the, you know, weight paint and stuff. So you can use it to, you know, not only just make the model move, but it can also be used for controlling modifiers and all that, and it could do so much more, but I'm not going to get into details on every single method of the vertex groups. I will only focus on just weight paint. So for this case, since we want to fix the weird freaking spine thing that's happening, what we'll need to do, basically when you click on your vertex groups, you should be able to see colors. If you see this sort of color, this means that this is the group that you're looking at. So what you're seeing is weight paint, and basically what you'll have to do is edit out, you know, basically you'll have to edit the colors so that way it makes it look better. So basically, when it comes to weight paint, basically there's a way to actually toggle or sort of adjust. So basically there's a way of weight painting through the mesh, which I'll go ahead and set that up real quickly. So let's see here. Let's say I were to select this, you know, vertex group here. There's a way for me to kind of weight paint through the model like this. And then there's also a way for me to not weight paint through the model, and it'll just only be from front faces. So basically what you just saw me on the right side here, basically you'll see that, you know, there's the front faces little option here, and then there's also the fall off. Usually if I want to paint in front of the face only, so it doesn't go through, you just click on front faces and then click on sphere, so that way, you know, it's only for the front face. And whenever I want to paint, you know, paint through the mesh, I usually have front faces off and then just fall off set to projected, so that way it will just be, you know, going through basically. But for this case, we want to keep it at front facing, at least for now, and then eventually we'll probably have to shift over to, you know, through and all that, so it just really depends. Now, to start off, in order to fix the issue, what we need to do is make sure to have our weight paint set to 0. And I will also mention there are other settings too, such as the blur, average, smear, gradient, and sample weight. So I'll go over those in a bit, but let's start off with zeroing out the weight paint. So all we have to do is make sure the weight paint's set to 0, set your strength to 1, set the radius to a decent amount. Doesn't have to be super big like this, just a very decent amount. So like maybe 60 or less, depending on the model's shape, or more like the model's size. So basically you just start off with zeroing out the weight paint, and you do this suddenly. Now, of course, if by any chance you're having a hard time selecting some vertices or something, you might want to definitely switch over to weight painting through by just, once again, turning off front faces, setting to projected, and that way you can weight paint through, so that way it's a little bit more easier. If by any chance the armature is distracting, you can then always just hide the armature on the hierarchy here, so that way you can focus on the issue. And just take your time on this, basically. Weight painting is not really super easy. It just takes a lot of time and patience to do, so remember that. And it definitely will take some time, like let's say you want to correct the dye issue and all that. It definitely does take some time, but what you're seeing right now is that you're basically just seeing what basically a simple way of me just fixing up the issue regarding the legs. So make sure that you zero out the unnecessary weights, so that way the behind looks pretty decent. And also, you make sure that the dyes, they're not, super, they're not super like in, but basically you can see that, the sides look much better when they're doing the splits. So that's like a simple start, doing this, and this is just by doing the zero weights, basically. This is just zeroing out the weights on correcting it. And if by any chance you make mistakes, just do Control Z and just continue doing it. And in order to add more to the weights, like let's say you want to add a little more smoothness to this area, I guess, and you're not sure what weight paint to use. Basically, you can use sample weight to basically copy the weight paint's value, so that way once you go back to draw, you can see that the weight paint value changed, so that way you can add more effect to it, basically. And you can add more smoothness if you wish, just to kind of show you that. Now, I definitely will also say as well, since I will have to probably, might need to do this, but basically, actually before I discuss about smoothing the weight paints, I do want to make sure I cover this tools, so that way you don't get super confused. So basically, blur, is basically the tool for when you're smoothing stuff, so it should look like this. It's definitely really nice. So instead of using weights smooth tool here to smooth out the weights, which you can do, it should, on the bottom left here, you can see that I have the smooth settings here. Usually I set mine to 1 and stuff. There's that way of smoothing, but you can also use the blur tool to have more control of the smoothing, which is actually pretty nice. So if you see some rough parts, it's great to use it to smooth out your stuff, basically. And then there is the average weights, which usually I sometimes use whenever I weight paint jackets that are in very complex shapes. But this basically just averages out the weights, basically trying to create a balance. I don't use this option too much. Once again, I only use it on super complex meshes. But it's pretty alright, something you could utilize, but I don't really use as much. There's even the smear, which is basically kind of like smooth, except you're dragging the weight paint data to other places. So it's not too much of smoothing, just basically just shifting the weight paint to the weight paint values somewhere else, basically. And then you have gradient, which I don't really use gradient often, unless I absolutely need it for like hair rigging and stuff. But gradient basically just allows you to make gradient weight paints, basically. And I already explained to you what sample weights are, just copy and stuff. And of course you do have the annotate tool as well, so if you want to make some notes like, okay, this part I need to fix and stuff, you can utilize that too. There's other options that also exist, such as the you can control how smooth or harsh the weight paint brushes or the stroke and stuff. I don't really play around with a lot of these settings too much, and I don't want to really overwhelm regarding the weight paint, but there are those settings, those are those other settings if you wish to play around with it, but I don't really play around with them too much, only when necessary. But it's just kind of like a depending on the person, basically. But I'll go ahead and apply some smoothness to my the Miku leg here. And basically, once you've done your weight paint edits, at least to start off with the spine area, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to object mode. We're going to bring back the armature, and we're going to go ahead and test out the movement of the armature to just kind of see like is it good and stuff. And as you can see, it looks pretty good, bends pretty well. Of course, some work can be done, such as balancing the crotch area. You can also double check to make sure that it looks good on the thigh area. Let me go ahead and toggle the scene out. Some stuff can be smoothed out a little bit more, but at least it looks pretty alright. Like I said, also the crotch area does need some work. But this basically, you basically have, at least been able to fix the sort of leg area. Just more refinement, which you can take more time on, which I won't go over once again super, because it really depends on the model, but just to quickly show you how to at least fix that issue. But definitely weight painting can take a real long time once you're doing refining. But like I said, just pose. All you have to do is just pose the model, go into, select your mesh, go to weight paint, and then you just select on the, it doesn't have to be just one vertex group, remember that. You'll have to mess around with all the other vertex groups. So you have to check around basically for the other vertex groups, see which one affects that said area, and see if you can fix it. You can try using the smooth little tool if you wish to kind of see like if there's a quick fix, but most of the time you do have to manually correct it, so do keep that in mind. It's just a lot of experimenting basically, which I'll go ahead and, because I was on the wrong tool, basically let's say for the crotch area, you don't know where exactly this little pointed part is being caused by. You can play around, so select, let's say, the spine vertex group. You can select basically zero out that little vertex, and if by any chance it doesn't budge, like it doesn't want to move after you zeroed it out, or even do 100, like if it doesn't zero out, basically that means that's not the right vertex group to edit. You might want to, for this case, you might want to also double check the leg, which I'll go ahead and do that. And yeah, after I did some smoothing, it does help correct it, but definitely, you might want to smooth out a little more, and that should help correct it. Of course, take your time experimenting with it, because definitely, once again, weight paint takes hours. But I won't go over that. I won't go any more intense than that, as it might take me a couple hours to sort of debug it, but at least it kind of looks slightly better, just, more fix-ups. But I would probably just edit out the other vertex groups to fix that. But anyways, besides that, make sure to once again test out your other ones. You might want to also, let's say for this case, you might want to correct something like the toe bone, for instance. This is basically another example, so basically you can see that it's affecting these toes here more. I also gotta mention too, I keep having to forget this, but make sure you click on the enable symmetry on x-axis, just to make sure that you're good, because it's very important that you symmetrize, if you symmetrize your bones here with the correct naming, like I just mentioned, the _r_left. Also utilizing mirroring for weight paint stuff. I wish this was basically on by default, but you always gotta remember to turn it on, and then there's times where you have to turn it off, so you gotta remember that. So it's pretty easy to forget about it, so be aware of the mirroring. But overall the legs should be fine though. I just wanted to make sure I double check that though. But anyway, so for toes though, I'll have to find toe R, and you can see that this is incorrect. So mainly what I have to do is just set this to 100 and just weight paint the feet area. And then of course do some edits, making sure that also, so for this case actually is a good example. So let's say you are doing 100% weight paint on toes, right, for this case, or anything. And let's say for example the toes still look weird. So in order to correct the toe area in this case, what you'll have to do is basically you have to find the other vertex group that does also affect those vertices, which for this case for the toe, since it looked weird like this, we have to go to the foot vertex group, and you can see that, oh look, there is affected vertex, there's weight paint data on the feet basically from the foot vertex group, and we don't want that. So you have to make sure to zero out those vertex groups, and do be very careful when you do that, because you don't want to also mess up the other part of the feet. So be very, very careful. But you can see now the feet are starting to look better. Alright, and that's good. Once again, take your time though, and if you do make mistakes, remember to always undo. So yeah, pretty simple. And if by any chance, let's say you are doing the weight paint and you still feel like it's not as smooth as you think, you can once again utilize smooth, and make sure that you basically see at the bottom part, make sure that you're on active group. You can also select on all groups if you wish, but that also affects everything else, and you don't want to affect every group basically. And actually, speaking of which though, I just realized I did some whoopsies on the weight paint, so let me go ahead and undo that. There you go. Yep, very important to undo. Probably because I have this set to see through, so make sure to set to front faces only so it doesn't do that basically. Which is also why camera angles are very important to this, because if you just weight paint like this, you might also affect the leg. So be very, very careful. Very, very careful. And just basically toggle that. And voila. So again, I just fixed the feet issue again. And yeah, I'll probably just go without the smooth tool just to be safe. But you should be fine though. But actually, I'll actually double check. And I'll just have that set to only active group. Alright, still see some little issue here. There you go, just a little bit. I can always correct more of it later if I want to be more perfect about it, but it looks fine-ish. Definitely this part is a bit more sunken in, so I would have to, once again, take more time editing it. Probably have to gradient out this area more. So probably add smoothness to it, and then just basically make it where the toe doesn't really affect it that heavily. Or you can even just adjust the bone placement as well to hopefully be able to sort of correct it as well, as you can see. Basically pushing a little bit more back kind of helps it, but once again, you'll have to still play with the weight paint. This is, once again, why weight painting is very complicated, because it's not just learning the buttons, but it's also kind of learning a bit of the technique regarding like how do you sort of debug it, which is kind of why, like, if by any chance you kind of see me sort of struggling a bit, it's actually really important that you kind of see me struggle, so that way you can see like how painful it is. Also, this part here is a bit wonkers. But yeah, so once again, auto weight paint is not super perfect. I definitely would say if you want, you could use AccuRig, which AccuRig is basically kind of like Mixamo, but a bit better and free. And definitely if you want to do like, I guess, proper auto rigging, you can utilize that, but you can't, I'm gonna be honest, you can never escape from the manual rigging. You always have to rig the thing yourself. But yeah, so I feel like for this case, we would have to probably adjust a bit of the bone, maybe? Oh, that's a little better. If I move this back. Yeah, apparently that's a little better, so I'll have to adjust the bone a bit so it doesn't act up. So that kind of at least is a pretty temporary solution-ish. Not the best, but I will have to, once again, adjust more of the weight paint, which will take more time to debug, which I don't want to make a 2-hour tutorial on me just struggling on weight paint. So yeah, so anyways though, but besides that, like I said, it's all about debugging it. I can't really go over every single weight paint bug because it just depends on your model, and this is, you know, this is a unique model and it has its own issues with it. Some stuff I do have to take more hours on working with, so usually weight paint could take, I don't know, depending on how complicated the rig is, it could take 3 hours. If you're having a simple rig, it could take like less than an hour, but the more complicated the model, the longer hours you have to take into it, which I think for this Miku model I might have to take like 3-ish hours, sort of 3-ish hours on like, you know, on the final model of this with the hair and the skirt and all of that, so it'll probably take like 3 hours or more even. Just really depends though. But one last thing also, before I do move quickly on to the face parts and how to quickly rig those, regarding the head weight paint, you gotta also double check for that, because sometimes Blender might have it where the weight paint for the head, it'll look correct here, but it's actually not correct. So you see, so basically you see here, the head is weight painted like this. This is actually incorrect. You're not supposed to have the head look blue or like this. So what you're supposed to do in order to fix that is make sure to select your vertices of your head. Just go to edit mode on your mesh and select the vertices of your head. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to click on the vertex selection on the weight paint area. So you go weight paint tab, weight paint mode, and go here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to utilize the vertex assignment, so that way you can do a quick fix on this. So select your head, make the weight to 1, and then assign it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to neck and you're going to click on remove. And then what you're going to also do, in case you've auto weight painted the eyes as well to the head, you're also going to hunt down the eye bones and make sure to remove it. Voila. So that way now you should have a more proper looking head, basically. I will also, I did forget that one vertex, so let me go ahead and correct that. Alright. So now that we have that, now you should have a more correct head, basically. So yeah, that was pretty complicated. I do apologize if you feel overwhelmed after me doing that. I also feel overwhelmed by this model. But overall, that should be pretty much some basic weight paint on the base model and should probably help you out. Now, like I said, one last thing, because this is pretty long, but I want to make sure you have at least all the basic knowledge, just in case. What about the eyes? How would you weight paint the eyes? So basically for the eyes, first and foremost, for this case, I would not auto weight paint. In fact, here's what I would do. I would select the eye mesh, select the armature right here, do Control P, and then empty groups. And basically with that, these eyes are connected to the armature, so you have the vertex groups here, but there is no weight paint data on them. So if you were to go into pose mode right now and move the head, the eyes don't follow, so you have to add the weight paint yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to select, I'm actually going to go ahead and apply the mirror modifiers for them, so I can make them into one object. You're going to go into weight paint for the eyes here. I'm going to select one eye, so this is going to be the right eye. Go into vertex, and then basically you're going to go into the vertex group you want to assign it in. So IR, assign it, and then the other eye, assign it to IL, and boom. And then what you're going to do is you're going to test out the model. So you should have eye bones, and in order to test them out, usually I make sure to have individual origins on this top little setting here set up, and then I just sort of test the eyes. If by any chance the eyes look a little horrendous, well, actually, first of all, for the love of God, I gotta remember the mirror modifier thing. But usually you can double check. Don't go too crazy on the individual origins. You might want to swap to median or just do it with one eye. But if by any chance your eyes look really weird, make sure to double check your weight paint. So I will make sure to double check my weight paint, so my weight paint looks correct. Double check my naming here. And as you can see, oh look, I named the freaking bone wrong. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's go ahead and fix that part. I'm actually wondering how I misnamed that, but probably because I got a little distracted or I misclicked. But yeah, so that's IR, that's IL. Let me double check the weight paint in case something happened. Ah, yeah, so, okay, okay, that was weird. Alright, so, okay, so the thing ended up derping out on me. I don't know if I'm crazy or something, but okay, so anyways, go to weight paint, go here, assign the weight paint, and then, go to IR, and boom. Yep, some stuff like that could probably happen. I'm sure I've named those things right, but okay. There you go now. You just saw me struggled on debugging eyes, but now the eyes are fine. Great. Alright, so now, individual origins. Now the eyes are working fine. Boom, chakalaka, boom. There you go. So hopefully that little funny moment should probably help you out, at least understand how I would debug eyes if that stuff happened. But overall though, pretty much what you just saw, hopefully you can apply that knowledge to everything else, not that sphere, but stuff like, I guess, the eyebrows. Once again, just eyebrow, empty group, go into weight paint, select the vertices, go to vertex selection, and then go and select the head vertex group, and then assign it, and boom. You should be able to, the eyebrows should be able to follow with the head. And of course, you should be able to apply it with everything else, every other face mesh part that you have. You can apply it, apply your knowledge so that way it follows the head, and yeah. That should pretty much at least cover the basics on weight painting the base model though, but of course do keep in mind, it can get quite complicated, it can get overwhelming. Definitely take your time debugging it. I did have to kind of rush this so that way, I don't make this tutorial super long, even though it's probably an hour tutorial, so I do apologize for being super long, but at least you should be able to have at least the basic knowledge on weight painting a base model. Yes, definitely you do have to experiment a lot of stuff, so it depends on what you're rigging, what's the outfit, what's the character. You definitely have to experiment a lot with weight paint. Weight painting is not easy, hence why the tutorial is like an hour long, and it could have been even more longer if I wanted to go even more in depth, but I really don't want to go too crazy on explaining the weight paint. And every single issue there is. I just wanted to give you some example issues and scenarios so you get an idea of how I do my workflow. How do I, make my model move and stuff, so that way when you rig your own model, you'll be able to see how I troubleshoot it and how you can be able to pretty much fix them all basically. But definitely take your time, have fun with it though, and yeah, and have fun posing as well. It's very important to make sure that you pose for any potential bugs and stuff. So that way, basically once you do some posing and stuff, you can be able to debug it a lot better. And don't, like I said, do not rush the process. Take your time on this. You are going to need it. You are going to need a lot. But yeah, overall, that's pretty much all I have to really say regarding that's all I really have to say regarding weight paint. If you have any other questions regarding weight paint, please let me know. Please let me know in the YouTube comments if by any chance you are struggling a bit. If by any chance, let's say you have a very complicated issue where, let's say you have, I guess, like your model is stretching out uncontrollably, I would recommend instead of commenting on the YouTube comments, please DM me on Discord. I'll make sure to have my social media, in the video edited here, so that way if you want to contact me for some more intense issues and you can't really fix it, then feel free to just contact me on Discord, and you could be able to send any pictures so that way I can actually properly help you debug your issues. And yeah. And besides that though, yeah, just let me know if you need anything else. And if by any chance you have any tutorials you want to recommend or you want to suggest or request, let me know in the YouTube comments and I'll try my very best to make the tutorials. I do have a big list of tutorials I do look forward to making, and hopefully I will get to every single tutorial. But yeah, enough of me rambling along. I hope you have a lovely day. Hika 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 sayonara everyone. I hope to see you guys next time, okay?